Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. My name is Tim Burch, and I'm the Executive Director for the National Society of Professional Surveyors and your host for the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on most of your favorite streaming platforms, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. For more information about the podcast and NSPS, please visit our website, nsps.us.com. So, without further delay, here's our next episode of Surveyor Says, the NSPS Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of Surveyor Says. I'm your host, Tim Burch, and, we're on the road again. This time, we are in Boise, Idaho. And this is a beautiful city. So no, I didn't lose a bet. It is, I've been here once before and enjoyed it then. Glad we came back. We are here for the Idaho America 250 initial celebration. And this one's being hosted, was hosted, 2-day thing was hosted by the BLM. Great ceremony out at the initial point of Idaho yesterday. Shout out to BLM, Michael Hart, and his staff and all. You'll see social media posts about that. Day 2 is a career fair at the Old Idaho Penitentiary, which ought to be interesting. It also gave me a great opportunity to meet up with what I say is becoming a good old friend. I'm old, you're not. Stewart Ward, recently finished up his term as NSPS Director, and is now he's transitioning into the role of committee chair for our marketing committee, which initially when we asked him, he's kind of like, "What? Why you want me to do this? I don't." Well, if you've been paying attention to our socials and about Stewart and his company have really, in my opinion, blossomed into one of the better marketing and really advocates for the surveying profession, not just Idaho. The messaging has been really great for the profession nationwide. But except in having this opportunity to be in Idaho, I wanted to just sit down with Stewart and dig a little deeper into his journey. Like I said, one of our mottos at Surveyor Says is every surveyor has a story. And I think you'll be very interested to hear Stewart's story as a surveyor, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And really what I admire about his philosophy on not just business, not just the profession, but really in life in general. So now that I've said all of that to embarrass you and put you on the spot, Stewart Ward, Dioptra, tell us a little bit about who you are. I mean, it turns out that I thought you were from, you were in Boise. No, you're in Pocatello, but you're originally from Boise.
I'm originally from Boise area.
But tell us a little bit about your journey to this point and how you got into surveying.
Okay. Well, thanks, Tim. So Stewart Ward from Pocatello, Idaho, owner of Dioptra. I've been born and raised in Boise in the Treasure Valley. Graduated high school here. I have a lot of family still here in town, and moved to Pocatello 21 years ago now to go to school at Idaho State University, and ended up just staying there. It's a great city, great area over there.
Makes me want to visit.
And it's I never thought growing up in Boise, I never thought I would end up in Pocatello or Eastern Idaho, but now I can't imagine moving back. So, so grew up here, got started with surveying here in Boise with Darren Levitt, former professor at Idaho State University. And kind of a weird thing, I don't have any family background in surveying. My grandpa on my mom's dad was a general contractor, and so he kind of dealt with surveying from that side. He built a lot of McDonald's in the Northwest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so he was kind of the general contractor for that, those firms. And so I actually have some of his old level and transit and
Neat.
level rods and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, in my senior year in high school, for one of my classes, I had to do a job shadow. And I had no idea what I was going to do because I couldn't job shadow I think the criteria was you couldn't shadow a family member. It had to be somebody else.
Oh, okay.
And my dad owned a business. He was a landscaper, owned a landscape maintenance company, and kind of a family business. Him and my mom started it and grew it, and kind of always thought that I would take that over. But then, like sophomore year, he got bad back and bad knees, and like, I can't do this anymore. So he's kind of gave it up and went a different route. And I was like, well, guess that's not going to work out. But so this job shadow thing, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, this is what I have to do. And she was like, why don't you job shadow my dad? He's a surveyor. And I was like, what? I don't even know what that is, but okay. It'd be something to learn about and figure out what it's all about. So I called Darren. It was Darren's daughter that was a friend of mine, and called him up and said, hey, I'd like to job shadow you for this class. He was like, yeah, sure. So I spent a day with him out in the field. He took me out to a construction site that they were working on. And he's like, this is what we do. And he had me slope stake a couple things, and he taught me what a tenth was, because I worked in inches in those days, So he's like, yeah, you got to, do this, write their stake this way. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of fun on a big highway widening construction job. I'm like, yeah, this is not too bad. And I asked him a few questions, and then at the end of the day, he's like, do you need a summer job?
Oh,
I'm like, actually, I kind of do. And he's like, well,
quite fortuitous.
I'll hire you. I was like, okay. Still thinking it's just going to be a random summer job.
Right.
And so he hired me for the summer, and I spent all that summer up until about Thanksgiving that year working for him.
Oh, nice.
That on that same highway construction project, we were I was the technician, the rodman or whatever you want, blue topping, slope staking. We laid out pavement markings, all that stuff on, I thought it was 9 miles, but we drove it the other day out to the initial point. It's more like 6, but I like to exaggerate. It felt like 9 miles, 100. Yeah. But it was going from a 2-lane highway to a 5-lane highway, I think is what it was. And so we were blue topping, I don't know, 6 points across every 50 feet for that whole mileage on multiple surfaces. And it was a brutal summer job, but I enjoyed it. I had fun. When that job was over, then I got more into the boundary type of things. But anyway, so that was my first experience with surveying. And then that winter, I moved to Houston and did a 2-year church mission, and then came back. And when I came back, I was like, I still didn't know if surveying was the right path. It was what I knew, though, and I knew Darren would probably hire me back.
Sure.
And so I contacted him and worked for him for a little bit. And then I decided, you know what, this actually might not be too bad. I decided to go to school for it, and with a little bit, I say a little bit of nudging, a lot of nudging from my wife. We were dating at the time, and she was like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And I told her, I was like, "Well, I'm deciding between surveying or fire investigation."
Okay.
Those were my two. And she was like, "Well, do you know anything about fire investigation?" I was like, "No, but I don't really know anything about surveying either, other than this 6 months that I had, a couple years ago." And she's like, "Well, do you like surveying?" I was like, "Actually, I really do like it." And I was working for Darren at the time. And she's like, "Well, just do that." I was like, "I don't really want to move to Pocatello to go to school." Because Idaho State's in Pocatello, and that's the only college in Idaho that has a survey program. And she's like, "What's so bad about Pocatello?" I was like, "I don't know. Just, I've never really been there, and
It's not home.
it's not home." And anyways, made the decision to move over there, and I was like, well, worst case, I decide like during school, I don't like it, make a change. And so that was the fall of 2004. Went to school, had a kind of a temporary job with Darren's brother, Kim, his firm, over in Eastern Idaho, and kind of just did that here and there, summer survey job with Kim and his company. And then, in 2006, after my sophomore year, my professor at the time, I was looking for a summer job, like between my freshman and sophomore year. And I knew the second year professor had his own business. So I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, do you need summer help?" He's like, "I do, but I make it a point not to hire my students while they're my students, because I don't want that favoritism perception." I was like, "Okay, fair enough. No big deal." The next summer, after he was my professor for the 1 year, he offered me a summer job in 2006, the summer of 2006 at Dioptra.
Okay.
And
Hence the connection.
Yeah. And so I worked for him through school summers for the next couple of years until I graduated. Still thinking at that time, I'm not staying in Pocatello. I'll move back to Boise or move back somewhere closer to home. My wife's family's here in Boise. My family's here in Boise. It kind of made sense to move back. But the more I got into working at Dioptra and Rodney Burch, who was the owner at the time, the more I really liked the area and really liked who I was working for and the types of jobs we were doing and stuff like that. And that's like, you know what, I kind of like it here. We're gonna stay here for a while, see how it all pans out. And we ended up buying a house, and kind of was like, well, I guess we're stuck here for a while. We bought a house. So, yeah, that's kind of my start in the surveying, and that gets me from initial exposure to full-time work, essentially, in that 6-7 years.
Right. Well, and I guess that's part of really why I wanted to kind of lay the foundation here, because you weren't the stereotypical second generation, uncle did it, somebody else did it, or whatever. You happened upon this because of a job shadow opportunity, and
right.
It was good that you were friends with Darren's daughter.
Right.
I need to send her a thank you note, getting you into at least suggesting you getting into the profession. So, all right. So you go to work for Rodney. I guess, so tell us a little bit about that progression from really getting involved there with him to the point where it's up to he wants to get out of the business.
So, yeah, okay. That's a story too. So 2008, I graduate college.
Great time to graduate.
Yeah, right before the crash. And Dioptra was very small. There was me and Rodney and one or two other people. is all there was. There was only 3 or 4 of us. Very small firm. He had started it as a side business, as a professor. He needed a summer job, so he started his own survey company. And he kind of grew it to that, and then it got to the point where he had a lot more jobs and needed to be in the business more and couldn't focus on both business and teaching.
Okay.
So he retired from teaching about the time, a year after he hired me. He was done teaching and said, I'm focusing on the business.
So it's on the business. Okay.
And so when I was there, when I graduated, I'd only been there a couple of years, but I was the most senior employee at that time because we were so small. But he was really good at hiring students and getting them going and exposed, and even just for summer jobs. And then during the school year, whatever they do, go back to school full time, whatever. But I wanted to work as much as possible. I was young. I was naive, I guess you could say. Just wanted to work my ass off to build money, because school's not cheap, living's not cheap.
Right. Oh yeah.
And even back then, it wasn't cheap for a college kid to live and work. So I wanted to work as much as I could, and I always made it. My work ethic comes from my dad and my mom, my parents, that they basically have the attitude: if you're not going to do it right, then don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah.
And if you make a mistake, you own up to your mistake. That was instilled in us. We were stubborn kids, but that was instilled in us. And so I always tried to make sure I did things right. Also knowing, though, that you got to make a decision and kind of live with it sometimes, right or wrong. You can't stew on your decision until you're 100%, because you're never going to be 100%.
Right.
And I don't know if that was something that Rodney saw in me that was like, I really like that, or what, but he treated me really well. And when the market crashed, for probably a year, it was just me and him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And there was just enough work to keep both of us busy. And so we worked side by side every single day on all these projects, and boundaries and topo, some little development stuff that was going on, but there wasn't much. A lot of it was just some boundary surveys and topo surveys for future projects, hoping the market would correct and round. And so we were with each other all day, every day, field office. He'd send me out on jobs by myself, but we talked all day, every day. He was, he's probably the biggest mentor in surveying for me because of that. Nice. I mean, I worked for him for 10 years, before I took over the business, but between Darren initially and then Rodney, those are probably the 2 biggest mentors I have in surveying.
Well, and to spend that much time with Rodney one-on-one,
yeah,
that's incredible. So that explains a lot to me, seeing it from the outside. So good. So he decides he wants to get out of the business.
So yeah, him and I, after a few years working full time, I had expressed a desire, because he always asked, what's your future goals?
Okay.
What do you want to do? And where do you see yourself 5-10 years? And growing up with a family business with my parents, I was kind of like that.
Right.
Even though that type of business that my parents had was very demanding, and it's very high demand in the summers when, landscaping and maintenance and stuff is like full bore.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of vacation time. My dad was working 6-7 days a week, 12 plus hours a day. And I was like, well, like, that doesn't sound fun, but the business ownership side did. So I always wanted to own my own company. But I also knew the challenges of starting from scratch. And so I always told Rodney, I was like, well, I see myself owning a business, but I don't see myself like leaving and going and doing it on my own. I would like to buy an existing business that's established, because I don't want to go through the headache of trying to find clients, purchase equipment, purchase all this stuff. That didn't sound exciting to me.
Right.
And so he's like, okay, well, eventually he's like, I'm not going to do this forever. So let's figure out, essentially a succession plan. And so him and I had talked about, okay, in so many years, you know, I'll be about ready to retire, or at least do something different, go part-time, something. And you can work to buy me out at that time. I'm like, okay, great. And it was like 7 years in the future when we started this. And I'm like, sweet, 7 years, that's enough time to prepare.
Yeah, that's a good timeline.
That's not bad. And then about 4, maybe 5 years into it, he was essentially offered a position as public works director for the city. The city engineer, public works director, was retiring, and that public works director and the mayor at the time basically came to him and said, look, we have this position. And he did a lot with the local city. And so I had a super good relationship with them. And they basically said, look, if you want this job, it's kind of yours if you want it. Like, we want you here, so it's yours if you want it. And he comes to me and he's like, okay, this came up. Do you want to buy the business? But I need to know now. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, this opportunity came up. They need a decision like in the next couple weeks or something like that.
Right.
And if you don't want to, if you're not ready, then that's fine. I'll stay on until you're ready. But if you think you can do this, I'm going to take this position. I'm like, okay, well, this moves up my timeline big time. You know, at the time, my wife was pregnant with our second kid. This was, I think, November, December of 2014. And Rodney was going to start at the city January of 2015. And my daughter was due February of 15. So my wife was 7-8 months pregnant and all this. And she's freaking out. She's like, we're just about to have our second kid. We have a 3-year-old at home. I don't work. You know, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this work? And I'm like, I don't know. But this is something that I wanted to do. Rodney and I talked about taking over the business and all this stuff. And she basically left it up to me. Yeah. She's like, well, if you think we can do it, then I'll support you. And I'm like,
that's a good partner.
I was like, okay, no pressure. Yeah. Luckily, she has a lot of faith in me. A lot of credit to my wife, because she pushed me to go to school for surveying. She has supported me a ton in everything that I want to do. In both in surveying and business and life and stuff like that. And so, anyway, so to make the decision, okay, I'll purchase, but there needed to be some sort of transition.
Right.
Right. And I knew that starting January, he was going to be at the city, but, we wrote our contracts so that he was still on for 6 months. So July 1st of 2015, 100% of the business would be mine. In that 6 months, there was a transition period where he was still involved. There was a lot of, back and forth, still mentoring from the business side. And then after January 1st, he was 100% out, and it was all on me. And it was scary for sure. So yeah, July 1st, 2015, officially I purchased Dioptra for Rodney. And it was good, but it was a struggle. Like, the good thing about the one-on-one with Rodney is I got the mentorship from the survey side, but I also got a lot of mentorship from the business side.
Excellent.
And so he was always very open with what we were doing, from how much money we made to where expenses went. I don't remember when exactly it started, and it might have started after the crash kind of turned around and we started hiring more people. Because when it was just me and him, everything was wide open. Books were wide open.
Sure.
I knew every single project, kind of a thing. And then we started hiring more people, and he started this thing where we would do a yearly financial review. So the books were open to everybody. He would review all income, expenses, profit loss, all that stuff. Every January, we would look back at the year before. We would look at what we accomplished, what goals we wanted to have for the next year. And then all the reporting is just out there for everybody to see. Which a lot of people really appreciate, that we're open that way. I know a lot of other businesses aren't that way, and that's fine, but it works for us. And so I've continued. That is one thing that I have continued with that, because I think it's important. It was important for me to understand.
Well, that's a great characteristic. And, I guess that's part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation, because so often when you get a transition like this and you succeed somebody, it sounds like there were a lot more positives about the existing business than there were negatives. And, we'll get into that a little bit more, but, I guess part of what I was wanting to kind of get an idea from you is that, everybody is different. You're not Rodney, even though you appreciated all of his time and effort and openness. What were some things that once you got in, you wanted to change? Was there much there, or were you pretty well settled with the way it was going?
That's where it gets a little bit hard, I guess, because when he left, there was six people total. He left, well, 7. He left, and then that left 6 of us. And Rodney wasn't this way, but I was at the time. I didn't think I was micromanaging, but I wanted to be involved in everything, right? Sure. And that worked for a little bit. I mean, Rodney was involved, obviously, as the owner, but when it came to certain things, he kind of left it up to us as employees. And it was a fault of mine to not trust the other employees when I took over, because I had been there so long. I'd been there 10 years,
right?
Almost at that point. Everyone else had been there less than 2 or less, I think. And so I made the assumption that I knew better than they did, essentially. I mean, looking back, that was my attitude. At the time, I thought I was mentoring them in a positive way, making sure that I was involved in telling them yes or no, kinds of the things. And I learned when one of my employees almost left, one of my key employees almost left. I think a year or 2 into it, she was awesome. And to this day, I wish she never left. But we're still really good friends. But she came to me and was like, I'm leaving. I'm not taking another job, or I'm taking another job. And it was like a gut punch to me.
Sure.
Because I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And so I go to her and I was like, look, is there anything I can do to get you to stay? And she's actually the one that pointed out. She's like, you're micromanaging too much. You're not trusting us to do our jobs. And that was another gut punch. I was like, oh shit, I didn't think I was doing that. So that kind of changed my whole mentality. But in general, most of the core foundation that Rodney had established, there wasn't a lot that I wanted to change.
That's good.
It was at the time even, it was very reputable. We had a ton of repeat clients. A lot of people trusted us. We did lose a few clients when Rodney left because they were key to him. So they went somewhere else, which, okay.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. But the base foundation I think is still there. You know, we're trying to do the best job we can. We're trying to do it ethically, you know, correctly, follow the rules, if you will. And make sure that everybody in the office understands what we need to do.
Right.
One of the big things that was really important to me and Rodney at the time when he was there is cross training. We don't have people pigeonholed anywhere.
Right. We silos.
No,
which is the beauty of a small company.
Right. Yeah, everybody, you get assigned a project, and that is your project start to finish. And that we try our hardest to make sure that happens every single time. There's, hiccups that come along the way, and it's got to, transfer to somebody else maybe, or where that person is pulled to a construction project that's high demand, and so they can't finish it. And, but in general, we try to just say that project is yours, start to finish, whether it's a boundary, a subdivision, construction project, just even a basic topo. You're doing all the field work, the research, the drafting, everything, with help, obviously, or if you need it. But that is your baby. You take care of it.
Nice.
And then making sure, even with new technology, that everybody understands how the technology works. We do scanning. We have drones, LiDAR drones. Everybody has basic knowledge. They may not be very comfortable with it, but they have basic knowledge of how that all works. And to us, that's really important to have that, because we can't have one person that's the only scanner person, right, or one person that's the only drone person. That we try to have multiple that can do that, so that we can mix it up and
not always all eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess, and you hit on something that was the point of having this conversation, to be honest with you. I guess from a perspective of when you're trying to run a small, successful business, change does need to happen. And it can't be, well, we've got to get more technical training, or we got to get more, more CEUs for the professionals or whatever. Literally nothing's off the table when it comes to trying to course correct a small business. And I guess I appreciate the fact that you said, early on you recognized that you were micromanaging, and but rather than saying, darn it, this is my company, I'll run it however I want, and unfortunately how a lot of people do,
right,
and say, my way or the highway, you took an opportunity to take a little bit of a step back and go, I need to change. I need to create a better environment for everyone, and not just for me to know what everything that's going on. So I guess that's part of really what I wanted to touch on, was some of your journey on finding a little different steward, a better steward, as far as a business owner, a leader. Because I'll be honest with you, haven't gotten to know you technically, I can just only imagine you, just like you just said, with everybody knows a little bit about the technology and we can go do. And I get the impression, and I know I'm not wrong, that any job that walks through the door for you, you personally could go out and do it.
Right.
And so technically, I can't believe there'd ever be a problem with any of the work that you yourself would do. But it's always also trying to improve your leadership skills, your business skills, your management skills. And I guess that's the part that has really intrigued me, watching Dioptra grow and change and market all these things. Without getting too personal, but what have been some of the things that you have done to try to become that better manager, leader, person, father, husband, all of the above citizen?
Well, that's kind of an interesting question, because when I took over Dioptra, I thought I was going to be a pretty good leader, pretty good mentor to the employees that were there. Because at the time, I dealt with them. I still dealt with them, worked with them, right, on projects and stuff. And we had very good relationships. But dynamics change, as you know, when you go from a friend, coworker as on the field crew, continue now all of a sudden you're the boss, right? And your mentality changes, their view of you changes, the whole dynamic changes. And until that employee pointed out that I was micromanaging, I had no clue. Because in my mind, I was like, well, I'm the leader now, so it's got to go like this. And it's a top-down leadership, right? Like you just said, and I don't know if that's a human nature thing or just a general mentality thing, but I'm the leader. It's my way or the highway, good or bad, or how strong you want to be by doing that. I think to a certain degree, we all get that mentality until we're told different, kind of a thing. And so when she said that, it was like, okay, I need to step back and look, because she may not be the only one that has this view of what I'm doing. And so talking to her, and talking to my wife, Danielle, about, what was going on. And my wife was like, well, maybe you are. Like, you kind of are like that at home. It's all right. No, I'm not. She's like, yeah, you kind of are. And I was like, okay. So, again, that support structure at home, my wife is amazing that way. And that mentality changed things at work a little bit. Started the change. And then, things kept going, but I was still struggling with trying to get things rolling smoothly. And, I'm still really good friends with Rodney. And at the time, I would still reach out to him with concerns like that and be like, hey, this is going on. How do I deal with it? How did you deal with it when we were, when you were over me or other people? Like, right. And, he's really good at looking at the best in people and looking at things from an outsider's view. Even when he's in the middle of it, he's really good at stepping back and let's look at this from a bigger picture view, kind of a thing. So when I brought those concerns up, or that concern up to him, I'm like, I'm getting these feedback from these guys, or they're not listening to me. What do I do? He's like, well, maybe you need to change a little bit on your end too. And you and I had talked about it the other day. He's actually the one that brought up this book by Captain David Marquette about Turn the Ship Around.
Okay. Yes.
He's like, you read this book. And he told me kind of the whole story. And so I was like, that sounds awesome. I bought the book like that day, I think. And then I found this podcast, The Learning Leader Show by Ryan Hawk, or with Ryan Hawk, I think is what it's titled. And found an interview that Ryan did with Captain David Marquette about the story about what he did. And reading the book and listening to that podcast, that was like a real shot to change the way I do things. That's where I attribute it, is at that point. And that was a couple years into ownership. Like I said, we were still successful. We were making good money. We had good employees, but there was just something missing there.
Well, and in your defense, young kids at home, young family, new owner, don't you think the subconscious kind of kicked in that I need to know everything about everything because I'm responsible for all of this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
And so, like I said, and not just in your defense, but and that's part of really the ones, like I said, part of this conversation is that you realized at that time that something's got to give, something's got to change, whether it's, even if it's just the messaging to the employees of, I've got all this on my plate, and being a little more, more open and being forthcoming with them. And you did make that step, and you did make that,
right.
You did make that course correction,
right?
You weren't just closed off to say, "Nope, it's my company, my way or the highway." You didn't do that.
No,
no.
Like I said, I was like that a little bit, but when I was getting that feedback, it was like, okay, this isn't going to be sustainable. I recognize that mentality is not sustainable for a small business that wants to grow, right? If you want to stay small, then that might work for you, but I wanted to grow the business. Now, I don't want to be some big national company or, even multi-state company, but I want to make sure that we grow and we're growing at a good rate, not too fast, right? But that we are able to still produce a quality product and grow. And I recognize that wasn't going to happen with my way or the highway attitude, right? Because I recognize that I have faults and I can't be in the middle of everything because I now have a business to run. When I was on the other side, I could be involved in everything because I just needed to make sure the project got done.
Right.
But now I've got to make sure that we collect, we'll send out invoices, we get payroll done, we have, cash flow issues or whatever, looking at equipment purchases, truck purchases, all that kind of stuff. That's now on me.
Yeah.
And making sure that we got work coming in so that everybody has a job to do and we can support them and provide them with hopefully a good living wage. Because it's not just you that you're looking out for now. You're looking out for this way bigger pie, and you got to make sure that everybody gets a successful piece of that pie.
Oh, exactly.
And that's hard to do when it's almost night and day from now you're just a project manager to, oh no, now tomorrow you're business owner and with employees, right? From that to business owner, sole proprietor, not much changes, I don't think, but I haven't gone through that. But when you take over a business with clients, with projects in production, with multiple employees, you have to, at first I did not realize that, but after a little while, I realized that is the most important thing. So you have to change as a leader, your mentality, the way you do things, how you communicate, and all of this all these experiences leading up to that mindset change really comes down to successful communication.
Yep.
Continued communication, for one. And the biggest thing I've learned in the last 10 years of ownership is a growth mindset. You can't be stagnant.
Right.
Always got to continue to grow in whatever it is you want.
Whoa, yep.
Yeah, whatever it is you're doing. So that's what I really strive. That's the biggest thing that comes to mind is having a growth mindset as a business owner, as a perceived leader, because now you are the leader of the company.
Right.
And a mentor, like you yourself have to recognize that, one, you don't know everything. You have to be continuously learning, continuously challenging yourself, because if not, how do you expect your employees to do the same thing? Because you have a survey technician right out of college or right, summer job for high school, how are they going to grow and learn and become possibly a long-term employee if you don't instill that growth mindset into them that hey, look, I'm doing this. I know I don't know everything. So let's learn together and that'll help them come up. And I hopefully my employees are listening to this and they understand that that's my goal, is that I really try to instill in them, hey, let's continuously learn together.
Right.
And they know where they fault. I know where I fault. But there's times that they'll come to me and be like, hey, what do we do here? And I have to admit, honestly, I don't know. Like, this is something new to me. So let's figure it out. We'll have to find, some other example or I've got to call somebody, even if it's my competitor. I've got to call them because I know they may have gone through this already. Right. So I have to call them and be like, hey, I ran into this. Have you ever had to deal with that? And if so, how do you get through it? How did you get through it? Kind of a thing. And that's another thing that as professionals, we need to understand that, yes, we have competitors and we compete with each other on projects and stuff, but we're such a small community, right, that we can't ignore the fact that our competitor may be the best solution for the person that called us. Right. Or they can be another resource if it's a unique situation or like I have a competitor, really good friend of mine. The business that he is part owner in has been around for 40 years. Nice. And so if there's a question on something, I know that potentially him or his company has dealt with it. So if I run into something, I can call him and be like, hey, I got this thing going on. Have you ever had to deal with this? And he's worked private sector, but both in a smaller firm and a large engineer surveying firm. So somewhere along those lines, most likely he's run into that. So he's a good resource for me and bouncing ideas back and forth. And I have other people that call me, sole proprietors. They're like, hey, I ran into this. Have you ever had to do this? Which sometimes I'm like, why are you calling me? I don't know. Like, why am I your first call? Right. But then stepping back and in the last few days talking, as we've been talking about all kinds of stuff, it dawns on me that even though they haven't never been employees of mine, we just know each other from, section meetings or society conferences or whatever. But if they're calling me, then they think that much of me, yes, or our business to know they look at us as a higher standard, I guess, maybe. And so they're trying to get some advice, and because luckily they're trying to do it right. So they're like me. If I run into something, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do this right. I got to call for advice. They're doing the same thing. They're looking for another good researchers. Kudos to them to not just assume that their opinion is the right opinion. They're going to try to get multiple opinions.
Well, exactly. And I guess that's part of what, I do want to go back for a second on your running the business, that to me, well, in my opinion, I think a good leader is just vulnerable enough with their employees to say, yes, I don't know everything. Let's figure it out together. But then also being able to allow themselves enough of a personal connection to each of those employees to go and really watch what their strengths are and their weaknesses and help them do the best possible job they can. But then also being open enough to allow the employee to say the same thing to you. You know what? I find you really, Stewart, I really find you as a boss valuable in this, this, and this, but maybe you're not the strengths of whatever little thing, but you're all working towards a common goal. And you're establishing that in your leadership, in your rhetoric, all of that stuff. So part of what I wanted to get back to was, I know it wasn't just a book and a podcast that said, oh, everything's open. It's from my perspective and watching you and your business grow, it's all of the other little stuff after that. That's like, well, if this book and this podcast did this, well, what if I dig a little deeper? What if I do a little more? What if I do a little more?
Right.
And you just continue to grow and try to improve not just yourself and your business, but just everything around you. So what drives you to do that?
There's a lot of things, but the biggest thing is just having that growth mindset is what I think. I mean, there's, the podcasts, the books that I've read, all those kinds of things help and make sure that, because there's all different ideas, right?
Right.
And just recognizing that, one, you don't know everything and you need to continuously improve. But when you see things starting to plateau, and that's one thing that I've recognized going through all this, is that I feel like I can recognize when things are starting to flatten. Even if it's just for a small amount of time, it's going to start flattening. So, okay, is it a short-term flattening just because of seasons or whatever, or is it because we're not doing something right? So we need to make a change, right? And some of that recognizing that the growth mindset and recognizing plateaus and stuff, we were successful from 2015 to 2020. We were growing, but slowly. Like every year we were growing just a little bit. And it's like, there's got to be, like, I want to grow a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's got to be something out there to help with that. And nobody, at least in the Pocatello area and really in Idaho that I know of, survey-wise, does very much marketing, because it's all word of mouth. It's all repeat clients and referrals and, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's all grand. But when you have so many other businesses around you, you can't just rely on this client I've had for 5 years, them to refer even 2 more clients a year, because most likely those 2 clients are only going to be a one-off. At least that's what I was finding, is that, yeah, so-and-so referred me, but it's like, I just need it so I can build a fence. I'm like, okay, great. We have the work. Okay. But one and done. How are we going to continue this? And so, and it goes back a little bit to, we had a big project, multi-year project at a mine for mine development with infrastructure and stormwater and all this stuff, which was a great project for us. But when that project died, or ended, I should say, that revenue died. And that's not like, okay, how do we replace that? So before that ended, we had to find something else to replace it. So it's building that pipeline, right?
It's feeding the monster.
And how do you do that as a small business when you don't have the resources to chase transportation work, to do all this stuff? And luckily, I had been following, like, Get Kids into Survey in Elaine for a while, and then she came out with her marketing academy. And And that's another one of those that I decided like this might work if it's the right way, but if I'm going to do it, I'm doing it. Like, I'm not just going to do it just because I want to spend the money on it, kind of a thing. And so I jumped on that about 2021, I think, somewhere in there. And I can attribute probably the last 5 years of growth to the knowledge that I've learned there. And to me, that goes back to the growth mindset. I had no idea what I was doing marketing wise. Random Facebook posts here and there, but never anything public, like going out to the general public, right? Even though I always thought, why don't we, rent a billboard or, do something like a radio ad or something like that. And, actually I mentioned those two things to Rodney at one time when him and I were together, and he's like, that's just a waste of money. You're not going to get that call. I'm like, okay, I'll drop it. You make the final decision. I'll drop this. But knowing now what I know about marketing, it's the long game, not the short game. And so, yeah, you rent a billboard for 6 months and you may not get a single call in those 6 months. But at some point, somebody's going to call and say, hey, I saw your billboard on the freeway. You do surveying. I need my boundary. And, and they recognize your brand. Now it's a branding thing, not just that. And so that growth mindset, just learning different aspects of business in general, which marketing is an aspect of business, learning that and teaching my employees what I've been learning and how we are ambassadors. No matter what we do, we are ambassadors of our company.
Yes.
I may be the boss, right? The quote unquote boss, but I'm not in the field every day like I used to be. These guys are in the wheels. They're on the front lines. They are now to the general public, they are the face of Dioptra because they're out there. They're the ones that the general public sees driving around in the trucks and doing the work. So they need to be professional. They need to be an ambassador of our company when they're out in public. And that's one thing I've learned too, is we need to be, in general, we need to be promoting professionalism and ethical, work habits or whatever you want to call it, no matter what type of job we're on, no matter where we are in the organizational structure. We're all in it for the same goal, as long as everybody understands the goal.
Oh, exactly. Well, that's going to lead me to my next question. Continuing education and, well, just educational opportunities in general. One thing I've noticed about you and what you've not just it's words, it's actions, allowing, and this is a shout out to Adam and letting him come and do a lot of YSN stuff, but then, embracing the technician side and getting your employees to go to seminars, go to various functions to learn about what we're doing and giving them the tools to do it better. And it's not just a professional licensing thing. It's not just a business thing. It's about the whole operation, and you're walking the talk, I should say.
Yeah. And again, that stems back to a lot of my experience with Rodney, because he was very active in the local section meetings and our state society. And he kind of dragged me to some of those early on, or dragged and strongly encouraged.
Right. But that doesn't know what a good mentor does.
Right. And so it kind of instilled in me that that's just kind of what you should expect from your technicians. But granted, everybody's got free agency. They can choose to go or not. But I encourage everybody to go and attend section meetings and our state conferences and stuff. And some of them choose to attend the monthly meetings and some don't, which is fine. When it comes to a true continuing education, like our conferences or seminars or, things like Trimble Dimensions or Carlson's Go West or, whatever these things are, I encourage them to go. And I tell them, and it's actually in our employee manual, that any continuing education is paid for by the company. Like, that's just our philosophy. If you want to better yourself, one, kudos to you. And two, if you're going to go learn about the latest Trimble technology or the latest, tips and tricks in TBC or in Carlson, because that's what we use, that's going to make you better. But you can come back and teach everybody else, and that makes the whole business better, for one. And so, but that's just the technical side, right? Right. But from the state conferences, I was with Rodney again. I was always encouraged to go as a technician, and so I don't know if I ever missed a conference as a technician, because he was always like, "Hey, we're going, just so you know," kind of a thing. And so I strongly encourage my technicians to go to our state conference. Yes, it's mostly a bunch of licensed guys getting their PDHs or their continuing ed credits, learning from big name people, Gary Kent, Chris Klein, all those people that focus, yes, a lot of their focus is to the professional, but there's a lot of stuff that the professional is learning that they need to know, but the technician is missing out if they don't attend, right? In my mind. Because we're not, anybody that has employees should encourage, in my mind, this is my personal philosophy, should encourage or strongly encourage their technicians to attend those types of trainings with them, because they're out doing the field work, they're doing the drafting, they're doing the sometimes even helping with boundary determination, potentially. That, hey, for me, and I think others do this too, I tell my guys, hey, the basics, so go do the field work. You come to me if you get stuck on something on boundary resolution, come talk to me. But in general, I want you to figure it out, right? Do the best you can to figure it out, and then bring it to me and we'll talk about it. But you got to tell me what you did, right? Don't say, here, tell me what you think. No, you tell me what you did, and then I'll correct you if I need to. Tell me the story. And so from that standpoint, I feel like those technicians need to be at the trainings with the Gary Kents, with the Chris Kleins, with those people, because they're teaching us boundary principles. They're teaching us evidence, things to look for field evidence. And if our technicians don't know what they need to look for while they're out doing this work, how do we know they're picking up the right stuff? How do we know that they're gathering all the relevant information they need, even from a research standpoint? Unless you're doing the research on your own, but if you trust your technicians to go do research, they need to know what they're looking for or should be looking for to have the most educated decision when it comes to the boundary. And so I do encourage and pay for my employees to go to these meetings and learn right alongside me and Adam as the professionals that are really the only ones that need the PDHs. But the last few conferences that my technicians have gone to, they pick up on things that I usually don't. They're like, hey, did you hear him say that?
Yeah.
Did you know that? And I'm like, did he really say that? Because you're so, you pick up on different things because of your level and your experience. And so it's super beneficial because that makes you take a step back into their eyes and be like, okay, are they truly learning? And sometimes they'll come, afterwards and be like, he said this and I don't know if I fully agree with it because of their experience.
Right.
And so it's another educational opportunity as the PLS to teach your technicians as they're building their career the best practices when it comes to that certain situation. So anyways, that's my philosophy on that. Like I said, good or bad.
No.
Everybody's got a different opinion on it. But
well, and we're trying to be a little respectful of your time as well. I guess, looking ahead, obviously you just in your personality, you're going to continue to try to grow, continue to try to course correct, see the best in people, bring out the best in people. And I guess based upon all of that, my question I always ask for every guest, how do you see the future of surveying? Knowing all the challenges we have out there with the graying of the generation, the retiring of our practitioners, it's not just the licensees. How many older field crews are out there that are going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years that we have to figure out how to backfill? Despite all of that, how do you feel about the future of surveying?
I think the future of surveying is very, very bright. I really do. I think like you said, there's going to be a lot of turnover in the next few years as people retire and, things change. But the way things are happening with growth and technology and just I can't say economy because, but there's development happening no matter what.
Right.
And, I think from that standpoint, there's always going to be a need for surveyors, and there's always going to be a need for quality professionals and quality technicians.
Yes.
Not everybody can be a professional, and in my mind, and some don't want it.
Right.
And that's fine. My personal philosophy is that is my personal philosophy, that not everybody needs to be licensed. I shouldn't say shouldn't be, but that can't be everybody's goal.
Right.
Because we do need some of those career field guys. Those guys that are almost just as knowledgeable as the professional. They just don't want the stamp, or because of whatever reason they can't get a stamp, but they know just as much. They could do what the professional does, but they don't want to be in the office. They want to be in the field all day, every day. And that's awesome. And we need those people. The profession needs those people. And there's a lot of people out there that are like that. And whether that comes from still going through school and just not wanting the education, but not wanting to take the exam to get licensed, or people that are, wanting a career change.
Right.
So because of educational requirements in the state, they can't get licensed, but they love the profession and they want to be outside. And I have a guy like that came to us a few years ago. Schooling was nowhere near what like a surveyor or engineering type degree. He did that for a few years, didn't like it, went a different route for a few years, didn't like that. But he loves being outside. He's very much an outdoors person. And we had a job posting. He comes to us. He didn't even know what surveying was really, but the description was you're gonna be outside, walking around the woods or whatever it is. And he's like, that's what I like doing, and I'm ready for a change. We hired him. We honestly took a chance because we didn't know if it was going to work out, and he is thriving as a technician, a field guy, a crew chief, whatever you want to call him. And he's worked his way up from, bottom technician level to now what I call a project surveyor, because he's willing to, he has that same growth mindset. He's always challenging himself.
Oh, good.
Always trying to learn, always trying to be better. And because of that, he's going to make a phenomenal career as a surveyor. But because of where he's at in life, he's not going to be able to get licensed, because in Idaho, he needs a 4-year degree or a certificate with a related educational background, which he doesn't have.
Right.
And so he's not going to get licensed. But that's okay.
That's okay. Well, I look at it, in similar to the medical field. Where would we be if we had all doctors and no nurses?
Yeah.
So, bottom line is that the technicians and the work they're doing, field and office, provide a heck of a backbone for this profession. And we have to learn how to embrace that much more as a profession. I know, like yourself, I know you and I do, and there are those that do. We've got to get more people that want to embrace that and encourage people to be their best as a technician.
Right.
That just because they didn't have the opportunity to go to school, they didn't have an opportunity to do that, and maybe, like I said, in their hearts, they don't want to sign something anyway.
Right.
That doesn't make them a failure. That they can be very, very successful. So
yeah. But we got to keep feeding that pipeline. It was with technicians coming in.
Yep.
And I think as we encourage more people to become surveyors, or just as NSPS is doing, and as I'm trying to just educate people what surveyors are and what we do and why we're important in everyday life, I think more and more people are going to be interested in the career and in the pathway, whichever pathway that is, into the profession. And that's why I think our future is super bright, because yes, we're going to have a lot of those really, really good surveyors that have been around for a long time retire, and their institutional knowledge is going to go away. And that's just the way things are. And we have to kind of understand that that's just the way things are. But as long as we're bringing up the next generation,
right,
we're going to be okay.
Got to keep doing that. I would be amiss if I didn't also, from myself and NSPS, say thank you to you and Dioptra. The constant support of sponsoring our business meetings, YSN meetings and conferences, student competition. It's been very generous of you. Besides your time as a director, thank you for your time as a director, and thank you for your continuing efforts. Sometimes begrudgingly as our marketing chair. I think it's good having your perspective through all this, and I'm glad we were able to sit down and to capture this. But thank you for being part of NSPS. It's been a wonderful relationship so far, and I look forward to our relationship, friendship for years to come.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and happy to help, because it's one way for me to give back is to help support the national and the local organizations to further the direction.
Yeah.
And we're in a financial situation that we can do that. And so we're going to continue doing that as long as we can.
Very good. Well, and I'd also be amiss if I didn't have a shout out to to Elaine Ball, Elaine Ball Limited, and all the marketing efforts they do for NSPS, and our partnership with her on the Geospatial Marketing Academy and everything that's going on with there. I think it's obviously you're a satisfied customer, and we're getting more and more people on board every day, and I think it's to me it's a good sign of growth in the profession that we recognize that, hey, we need to toot our own horn a little bit. If that's just what marketing does, so be it. We need to be able to do that.
Yep.
So I agree. Thank you, Elaine. We appreciate that. Well, that'll wrap it up for this episode of Surveyor Says. Wherever you listen to the podcast, hit that subscribe button, and also check us out on YouTube. Thank you. You've been listening to Surveyor Says, the NSPS Podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, as we are here to help. Subscribe to the podcast on most of your favorite streaming platforms, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. For more information about the podcast and NSPS, please visit our website, nsps.us.com. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.